Here's our enhanced US.com support. There's an older picture of us on there as far as the support team. This is a slightly better picture, so I prefer that you don't go to look at that website because I was not prepared for pictures that day. So we're going to be talking about redistribution of credits. It will be mostly painless, and I've chosen probably one of the most difficult topics to go over because it was a challenge for me right at first. As soon as I kind of figured it out, I wanted to do a presentation on it to get it recorded. The first time that we ran through it, we didn't record, so hopefully we'll get it all down this time. What we're going to be talking about is redistribution of credits. Why do we need it? How to actually do it, how to redistribute credits, how it works and what it does. And then at the end, we'll have resources and questions. So if you have questions throughout, you can use the chat feature to ask your questions, or you can make notes of them and just email them to me later. I'm hoping to answer most of your questions through the presentation. So jumping right in, a definition of redistribution of credits. Redistribution of credits is the process of adjusting a customer's income center balances so that credit balances are used to pay off debit balances. Where do credits come from? So any operation that can change the balance of a group or income center has the ability to create a credit. Some examples of that would be overpayments. If a customer comes in and pays too much, then that is a credit that goes onto the account or onto the ledger. You can adjust a credit balance onto an account. You can reverse adjust an adjustment that will put or possibly put a credit balance on an account if they've already paid the adjustment. Reapplies can possibly put credit balances on accounts, and refunds, especially deposit refunds, can put credit balances on accounts. Redistribution is done at the group and income center level. It's important to note that there is a deposit group and there is an other group also. They can both have balances and they don't have their own income centers. But they would also be included in the redistribution of credits if the payment priority is set up for that. So the credits are redistributed in order of payment priority, and that screen is found here: utility billing, UB administration, payment information, and then payment priority tab. It looks like this here. We'll actually go over that in more detail a little bit later on. So you may be asking, why do we need to redistribute credits? First, a simple answer is for penalties and lock services. Penalties are applied based on the due date of a balance, and that's by income center also. If a payment pays the wrong balance off first, then an older due date on a balance may cause a penalty to be applied when you're not expecting it to. Since balances are kept at the group and income center level, you can have several smaller balances that make up a customer's total ledger balance. If a full payment is made to an account, then the full balance is paid off. And at that point, when the payment is made to an account, the system is actually doing a redistribution of credits, or the initial distribution of credits of that payment. So it's paying your income centers and all of that according to the payment priority at that point. But since it's a full payment, it's going to pay everything to zero, which means it's going to pay all of your groups and income centers off. However, if a partial payment is made to that account, the system has to decide which of the smaller balances gets paid off first and which ones don't get paid, because you're not going to have the full payment amount. It's going to be a partial payment. The overall balance of an account can be zero, and a charge can still receive a penalty. So this is an example of how a penalty can be on an account, or how you can get a penalty on an account when you have a past due balance. except for if you look at this here, you have your unbilled balance, you have your less than 30 days, you have your 30 to 59 days, and we have a $25 debit in the service water here. We have a $25 credit in the service sewer. That nets to zero. For your ledger balance. So your customer will look at that and think that, hey, we don't have, I don't have any balances here. I shouldn't be getting a penalty. The system is still seeing these as two separate balances. So you would still possibly be able to get a penalty on this $25 charge because this has not paid that off yet. So redistribution of credits would move the $25 credit from the service sewer income center to pay the service water income center. And that's all depending on the settings that we'll go over here in a little bit. This will keep the $25 credit from being used to create a penalty. When that is actually done, when you run the process, these two fields will be blank here because it will zero itself out. So you have to move the money, the credit balances from the income centers that they're at into the other income centers that need to be paid off. So this is an example just to kind of put it into the real world. Everybody has to pay their bills. We have a water bill, we have a house note, we have a car note, we have electric bill, gas bill, groceries. They all have to be paid. We have all these things that need to be paid. Some of us have pets, and they can cost a lot of money too. So if each bill you have to pay is $300 per month, just to simplify things, for a total of $1,800, and you make $1,500 a month, you have to decide what bills get paid and what bills do not. So, a lot of us do this. We're trying to figure out, who we can short this month just to get by, and then next month we might switch to somebody else and not pay a different bill. So if you don't have enough money, this is the partial payment portion of things, to pay all of your bills at once, then you're going to have to decide which one doesn't get paid. And the system does the same thing with the income centers, groups and income centers. You have a group and income center that has a balance in it that needs to be paid. The system has to decide which one gets paid and which one doesn't. So let's look at how we can redistribute credits. First, when should we do it? We should do it anytime that you're going to do any type of bill run or batch payments or anything dealing with financials, especially right before you do penalties and lock services. That way, you're making sure that all of the balances that you're using to create the penalties and lock services report, those balances are actually past due or aged enough to create those lock services and balances, lock services and penalties. So it's good to do that before you do those operations. It's good to do that before a bill run because that deals with your due date and your aging. So that's when it should be done. You shouldn't do this when you're doing any other type of operation in Impresa. So if you have somebody taking payments on one workstation, you don't want to redistribute while they're doing that. Well, if you have somebody doing a bill run, you don't want to run redistribution of credits during that time either. Anything dealing with a financial consequence, you don't want to run redistribution of credits at that time. Where you go, you navigate to utility billing, periodic, redistribute credits. That will bring you to the screen here. You can redistribute by cycle or account. If you go by cycle, then you can select which billing cycle. You might have more or fewer billing cycles here. You can select one or multiple. The same thing with your service, your groups and income centers. You have your service water, service state fee this company does. You may have several different groups and income centers here. We have an other deposit and penalty group. You can select the penalty method to be used also here. And once you're ready, you can hit redistribute. If you select by account, that tab there, you'll see that you have the accounts here. You would type your account number in here, hit tab or enter, and it would put the last name in. You have the same options here that will allow you to redistribute by group and income center for what penalty group. Hit next here. You can also run redistribute credits from the task scheduler and do it outside of regular business hours, so that it runs on a schedule. We have several companies that have that set up. That would need to be set up for you, or if you're already using the task scheduler, you can create a task for that. And we would be happy to help you with that if you want to call in and put in a ticket to get that set up. So the payment priority screen, there's a lot of information here. Of course, when we look here, we go to utility billing, UB administration, payment information, and then the payment priority tab. Of course, you have to have access to that. If you don't have the security permissions, you can't see the screen. So on your payment priority tab, this here is your payment priority list. These are the groups and income centers that you're going to be paying and in what order they're going to pay off with a partial payment. Now, I talk about partial payments and credits as if they're the same thing. They're very, very close to the same thing. They work in the same way, so they all work off of this screen. A partial payment is not enough money to pay every income center, group and income center. A credit on that account is just a credit balance in one group or income center that needs to be moved to other groups and income centers, and it pays in the same way. So you're going to see that it's going to pay the water first, the sewer next, the service tax, the impact fee, lot fees, garbage. They have lots of groups and income centers here, and some people have, several pages of this. It's important if you want things to pay off in a certain order, that you can select these and highlight them and move them up or down in the list here with the arrows. And we sometimes have to adjust that for different purposes to keep penalties from hitting the wrong groups and income centers. The overpay method, this one here is set to other, which means that any type of overpayment is going to go to the other group, and that's going to cause a credit in the over group or the other group. Your other options are group, other, and then first with a rate code. So if you choose group, then it's going to use your overpay group here and your overpay income center here for the group. If you choose first with a rate code, it's going to go to your first group with the first income center that has a rate code, and it's going to put it in that group in the income center. So if you have an overpayment with this selected, it's going to ignore the overpay group and overpay income center, and it's going to put it all into the first group with an income center attached to it. All right, and then we have the leave credits in place. So when you have this selected here, that's going to leave any credits in place that are on an account in whatever group and income center they're in. So if you have this selected, it kind of ignores redistributive credits. It's not going to move them anywhere. It's going to leave them in a group income center. So if you have a credit in service sewer, it's going to pay off any balances in any period in service sewer only, and it's not going to move if you have that selected. All aged by income center before any current balances, and all aged or aged and current by income center. This is your priority method for partial payments. You'll see this here a little bit later. I'll kind of go into more of an explanation of that. Set overpay as billed. That means that if somebody does put an overpayment on the account, it's not going to be showing in the unbilled balance. If it shows, if this is selected, it's going to go into a billed balance, which would be less than 30 days and not unbilled balances. Pay unbilled balances. That means that a overpayment or redistribution of credits is going to pay an unbilled balance, which if this is not selected, then anything in the unbilled balance gets ignored, including credit. So if you have a credit that's in the unbilled balances, it is going to be ignored. It's not going to be redistributed. It's just going to stay in the unbilled balances. If this is selected, then it's going to use any credits in the unbilled balances to pay off other debit balances throughout the system. You have other options here too, as far as unlock groups when all balances are paid, unlock groups when past due balances are paid. You can have the status change, and that just changes the status, and that helps with billing too if you have several tiers of billing. A credit balance is treated like a partial payment when being redistributed, assuming that the payment priority is water, sewer, garbage, penalty, and assuming that all periods have balances for all income centers. The charts will show the path that payments will take. So this is a little bit more detailed explanation here. Priority method for partial payments here, and that was on the payment priority screen. All aged by income center before any current balances will pay in this order. So if you look here, we have period 100, 101, 102, and 103, and this would be our current period here. We're assuming that there's a credit balance, a debit balance in each one of these groups and each one of these periods. So the first one would pay here, according to this payment priority. It would do water in the oldest period that has a charge, and then it would move down and it would jump. You can see that it's jumping the group and income center barriers here and going down and paying all of the oldest charges first. Most companies, I think, have it set up this way. Once those are all paid and you still have a credit balance, it's going to skip to the next one, and it's going to go down the list just like that. If you have a credit balance enough to pay every single one of these, it's going to go in this order to pay them. It's going to pay the oldest to the newest, and it's going to pay all of your groups and income centers at once. So the next setup is if you go with the age and current balances by income center, it pays a little bit differently. The same setup, you have your period here being the oldest is 100, your current period is 103. If you have this set up, it's aged and current balances by income center. So your credit balance is going to stay in this income center, this group and income center here, water, and it's going to pay all of the balances off all the way up to current. So you're going to start with the oldest and go all the way up to current. And then if there's still a credit balance on the account, it'll skip to the next group income center and start paying those. So you can see how that differs from the other. If you want all of your water paid off before any group and income center, then this is the way to go. If you're wanting all of your oldest balances paid off first, then go with this all age by income center before any current balances. And all of this is going to be in a PDF that you can download and look at. And then we're also recording this, so you can get a recording after the webinar. So also, redistributed credits is not concerned with aging dates. Balances are paid by period and payment priority only. So if we look at our example back here, you may have several different due dates in water in period 100. So you might have several different charges for water here, and they all have a different due date. Redistribution of credits is not concerned with the due dates or the aging of those charges within this period. It pays them all the same. So that's also a reason why some of our reports only go down to that level, is a payment only goes to the income center level. If you are using all age by income center before any current balances and a penalty is applied with a due date, then a water charge is applied 5 days later. The penalty's aging date would be before the water charge's aging date. However, the water income center is before the penalty group in the payment priority list. The water charge will be paid off first in a redistribute of credits because of a payment priority. So even though you have an older penalty charge in a different group, your water charge is going to be paid off first because of the payment priority. All right, so leaving credits in place, this overrides a partial payment priority options and will not move a credit from one income center to another. So this is an example from the handout that we have. It's actually in our team support software. This is a setup that we're going to use for this example. We have set overpay as billed and pay unbilled balances, and we're using all aged by income center before any current balances. So we're going to pay off the oldest first according to this payment priority. Credits are applied, and this is kind of universal here. Credits are always applied within their own income center first, starting with the oldest debit balance to the newest. So wherever that credit is, when you run redistributive credits, it doesn't matter about what you have here. set on your payment priorities, that credit is going to pay with its own group and income center first, no matter what. So that's kind of universal. The system then follows the payment priority list and applies the remainder across all income centers from oldest period to newest, and that's by all age by income center down here. Unbilled balances are eligible for redistribution because we have this set, pay unbilled balances, set overpay as billed. Overpayments will be put in the billed less than 30-day column on the customer's ledger, and that's because of the set overpay as billed here. All right, so looking at this in kind of a little bit more detail, using those groups and income centers, you'll see that we have $200 credit in the service sewer group and income center here. The first thing that it's going to do is it is going to look in its own group and income center for any unpaid balances or any debit balances in this any period here within service and sewer. If it finds it, it's going to pay it off. But since we don't have any here, then it's going to go to our payment priority. And this has kind of been simplified to make it easier to see. This is the order of the payment priority. This won't necessarily be the same setup that you have. You might have different service groups and everything all mixed up throughout here, and your payment priority will be a different order. Then it's not just going to go straight down the list. But to make it more easy to see what's happening here, these are all in the same order as our payment priority. So this $200 is first going to go to pay the service water, and the oldest one first, which is 120 days plus. So it's going to go ahead and pay that $45.91. Once that's paid, you can see that it is removing that balance here, that debit balance. It's readjusting our totals here. It's going to readjust our column down here also. And it's always going to net to zero. It's not going to change our total balance, or shouldn't. So the next thing it's going to do is do the next group in income center, which would have been sewer, but it's already looked in here and it hasn't found anything. So it's going to skip to the next, which is service tax. And it's going to pay this 23-cent balance off here. Once it pays that, you can see again, our total balance is not changing. It's still $30.44. It always should net to zero. After that, it's going to pay the next group in income center, and we're going by the oldest now. So even though we have charges here in these other groups that are above the penalty, the oldest charge was here. So that $2.30 charge that gets paid next. Then the next would be this $50 charge that gets paid off, and we still have a credit, so it's going to continue paying. And the next one we have, the next oldest charge, gets us back up to the deposit, so it goes there next and pays a $20 charge. After that, what we have left is $81.56 of this credit, and we have a charge of $100 in the deposit, so it's going to pay that next according to the payment priority. All right, and once that's done, there's no more credit to pay, so this penalty doesn't get touched. However, because of the settings we had, if we had more money or more of a credit, this penalty could get paid also because it's in the unbilled balance, and we have that marked in our payment priority that we're allowed to pay unbilled balances. So that, again, nets to zero. Is never changed our total balance here on this account, on this ledger. Is always $30.44. We just had credits and we had debits, and we had to equal them out. We had to use the credit to absorb the debits. So we have a few reports that are related to redistribution of credits. The first one is the report that you actually get when you run redistributed credits. This report, not going to go into a lot of detail on these. I'm just going to kind of show you around on what's happening here. You have your account number. You would have your customer's name, your group and income center. You have your credit amount and your redistributed amount here. Now, if you look at this example, you can see that this is our credit amount here, redistributed amount here. This is all on one customer. And if you look, you have $856 here. That's the credit amount. It is going to redistribute to these groups and income centers here: service, water, fire protection, sewer, and tax. And this amount here is going to equal this 856 there. Again, so it nets to 0. Then you can reprint the Redistributed Credits Report. It's the same report. You go to Utility Billing, Reports, Reprint, Redistribute Credits. You can do it by audit number or by date created. The Period Activity Closeout Report. This report will show what has been redistributed in the current or previous period. Utility Billing Period Activity Closeout Report. You have an AR summary or transaction summary. It looks like this here. You can see the different groups over here on the far left, and then you have your beginning AR, the charges, all the different adjustments and payments that were made, and then you have redistributed credits here in this column close to the middle here. And this shows what's been redistributed. It's kind of hard to follow, and I really wish I could explain this report a little bit better. But this really is an overall view of what's changed in the period. And that redistribute really shouldn't move anything around because, again, it should net everything to 0. And this is all still within that closed period activity report. You have the AR transaction detail by group and income center. And you can see here, I just took a little snippet of this. You have the service water group, and you have the type of transaction that went on, and that's redistributed credits here. You can see the account, you can see the audit number. So if you're looking for a specific account and you think there's a problem with the redistribute, you can come to this report here, get the audit number, and that helps us help you search for what may have gone on there. You can see these are all credit amounts. And we can look at that report in more detail. If you have any questions about these reports, we can go over those at a later time. And then the AR transaction detail customer summary. This goes by customer again. It shows the beginning AR of that customer and the ending AR of that customer, and it will show you all the different changes that's happened here. So you have a redistributed column here. We don't actually have any credits that were redistributed in this little snippet. But that would actually show on a detail basis by customer what you got in your AR transaction summary report. The customer transaction screen is another report, and I know I'm going a little bit over here, and I apologize. But the customer transaction tab here is a customer transaction final tab or financial tab, and then all. And this will give you an overview of all the financial transactions that's happened. You can use this little filter here to look at them and filter out different ones. But you can see here, this is probably my favorite one to look at because it's just easy to see. It takes a little bit of getting used to. You can see the origin is redistribute credits here, and then it's going to show you what's actually been redistributed here. So you have your amounts, and you have your credit balances here, the negative numbers, and your debit balances here that have been absorbed by this amount that's been redistributed. And you can print that out to paper also if you're trying to hunt down different information for a customer or something like that. You can print that report. So we've covered redistributive credits. It's a process that moves credit balances between income centers to reduce debit balances. Running redistribution of credits will help ensure that penalties are applied to the correct balances. This also helps ensure that the correct accounts are eligible for locked services. Redistribution of credits does not affect the overall balance of an account, just the balances of the individual income groups and income centers that make up the total balance. So it's always going to net to zero. We covered how and why to redistribute credits, utility billing, periodic redistribution or redistribute credits, redistribute by billing cycle or individual accounts, group income centers, and penalty method. We can do it by the task scheduler. And the reason why that we do it is because we need to penalize the correct balances and we need to lock the correct customers. We cover some of the reports. And on that, again, if you have any questions, we can go into more detail at a different time. Customer transaction tab, financial tab, all is the one that I like to use the most because it gives you the most detail on a specific customer. And again, I'm just a little bit over, but we will provide documentation after this, and this has been recorded, so we will make the webinar available after we've done some editing on it. And then the team support knowledge-based ticket number is here. And if you have any questions, you can email me directly or you can put in a support ticket with team support.